Hey guys, welcome to another of my pool plan videos. In this video, I'll be covering my plans for the upcoming arc where Jack Garland will be a featured synergy unit, and you can refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the slide to see which events these are. This infographic was derived from the thewereotter's global forecast, and I will also include a link in the video description to the full forecast as well, so do check it out. First off, a quick look in how I did in the previous arc, which was Seymour's FRBT arc. This was actually the arc where I tried to save resources as much as possible, and on the very first event I actually got pretty lucky because in the free multi-pool I managed to score Seymour's FR. The FR is actually still sitting in my inventory. I didn't bother to MLB it because I really wanted to save my high power stone stash for Jack Garland's arc. That's also the reason why I wanted to skip all the other banners, but as you can see, I went and spent 200 tickets on Maria's event. I didn't really want to, but I had a lot of tickets left unclaimed on the co-op mission as well as the hunt missions. So initially I went in with the plan of using just 100 tickets so that I could claim the tickets from the hunt and co-op shops. But I didn't get anything in 100 tickets, so I decided to go in for another 100 tickets, which admittedly was really a mistake. In that 200 tickets I didn't get anything at all, and I decided to just cut my losses there and save the rest of my resources. Coming to Yuna's event, that was also a skip for me. I already have everyone's LDs here, so Seymour, Maria and Yuna's LDs, so I didn't really feel the need to pull and use any of their FRs. The first event coming up will be Act 3 Chapter 11.1, featuring the much awaited and very hyped Jack Garland. Jack Garland is going to be a new character in the global version of the game, so I'll include a very brief overview about his kit on this slide here. First off, both his S1 and S2 does pretty okay damage, and importantly they grant him his 6 turns overhead called the Cyclic Warrior buff. As long as his overhead is up, he gets an additional follow-up attack called Soul Burst anytime he attacks an enemy and results in the enemy getting broken, which shouldn't be much trouble at all for Jack Garland himself. On top of doing some nice damage, Soul Burst also features a brand new mechanic in the game called the Minus Brave. Whenever Jack Garland uses an attack that has the minus brave component in it, enemy's brave can be reduced below 0 up to a certain cap, and with just his S1 and S2 he can have a minus brave amount up to 100% of his max brave. So for example, if he has 100,000 max brave, he can likewise bring the enemies down to negative 100,000 brave. His EX gives him a 2-turn framed buff called Lightbringer, and on top of having some nice buffs to his stats, the Lightbringer framed buff also increases his minus brave cap by another 100%. So again, for example, if he has a 100,000 max brave, his minus brave can go up till 200,000. His LD upon use will refund 1 skill use of his S1 and S2, and also gives him a new framed buff that lasts for 12 turns, which enables the plus version of his Soul Burst follow-up attack. When using Soul Burst Plus, the minus brave cap is now at 200%, which is more, and this stacks with any other boosts or buffs to his minus brave cap that you can get from his other effects. Plus it has also another additional HP dump, making all his attacks hit much harder. Jack Garland will also get a new BT weapon on this event, and on top of the usual nice stats boost that BT auras give, his BT also gives a new true damage effect, in a way very similar to General Leo's LD call ability if you've seen it before, where anytime a party member deals HP damage, they get another HP damage dump based off 30% of the enemy's minus brave amount. Upon use of his BT finisher, Jack Garland also gets a 6-turn framed buff called Chaos Bringer, and very important distinction is that Chaos Bringer will replace Lightbringer. The two frame buffs cannot exist together, and Chaos Bringer will always have priority over Lightbringer, so as long as Chaos Bringer is up, his EX will no longer apply Lightbringer. So for all intents and purposes, you can sort of view Chaos Bringer as an upgrade to his Lightbringer buff. It does have a very massive minus brave cap plus 400% of his max brave. And as you can imagine, this means that with that Chaos Bringer buff and all his other buffs boosting his minus brave cap, the enemy can go to a very negative brave amount, and this in turn helps to drastically boost the party HP damage based off his PT aura. Jack will also get a new force weapon, and his force weapon is pretty decent based off his kit. First off, whenever a player does any melee attack, you get plus 20%. Whenever you end one of your turns where at least one enemy is in a broken state, you will get another plus 20% bonus. And if you do end your turn with the enemy having minus brave, you get a plus 30%. With Jack Garland in your party, and as long as you build focusing on melee centered damage, or I guess allow him to hog as many turns as possible since his kit is melee, you should have no issue getting the plus 70%. Plus 70% itself, I guess, isn't game breaking or anything like this, but considering the ease of actually getting his force conditionals, I'd say it's overall pretty much decent and will actually allow Jack Garland to output significantly high damage during his PT mode, considering that he actually does nice damage on his turns. During his force time, you also get a brave damage cap up for your entire party by plus 30%. My plans here is to pull for Jack Garland. I'll be spending gems since I haven't used gems for quite a long time, and I have a decently sized stash of high power stones at the ready, considering I've saved in the Seymour FRBT arc. After Jack Garland, we will have Beatrix's intersecting wheels. This is also actually another event and upgrade that I'm pretty much looking forward to because I've always been a fan of Beatrix and her kit, and looking over at the rework that she will be getting here, I must say I'm pretty excited for her upcoming rework. Along with the usual damage and HP dumps rework that characters get, she also gets a nice boost to her Rose Petals debuff. First off, the duration has been increased by 2 turns, so during the battle or wave start, all enemies gets 4 turns debuff of Rose Petals, and when she uses her LD, it applies 8 turns of Rose Petals as opposed to the usual 6. Of particular importance, Rose Petals will now do 3 HP dumps in total, which is firstly a brave gain into HP damage dump, and then twice of brave damage plus HP damage. It is actually very similar to how Gladio's counter attack works. Not forgetting that for Beatrix, her Rose Petals full up attack has always ignored enemies' defense, so you can expect it to hit very decently hard. Beatrix will also get a new FR weapon. Upon use, it will dispel all enemies' buffs similar to her LD. It will also buff the entire party with her trademark 12 turns of HP regen and defense up buffs. Her force time is centered around the often damage, which is anytime a player does a thunder attack, which also includes any thunder often attack, you get a plus 5% bonus. Whenever Beatrix herself does a thunder attack, you get another plus 15% bonus. So this means that when her Rose Petals goes off, it would hit both conditionals and get a nice plus 20%. Whenever you end a turn with more than or at least 12 buffs across your entire party, you get a plus 30%, and you should have no issue hitting this conditional as well, since Beatrix herself applies a range of buffs across the party. On top of that, during her force time, if you have 12 or more buffs, the entire party will also get a plus 20% HP damage up and plus 20% party max brave cap up. I've always been a fan of often FRs, and I must say, looking at this, I think Beatrix FR does really have nice potential to hit very high amounts. I think the only drawback here is Beatrix herself doesn't normally thunder enchant the rest of your party, So if you are trying to capitalize on this with other often FRs, you would need to somehow enchant them with the Thunder Elemental as well. One note here is that on this event, Lightning herself will also get a rework which updates her HP damage and dumps across her kit. I think notably both her S1 and S2 are now 3 HP dumps, which might not seem like much, but don't forget Lightning has always been sort of like a turn hogger DPS, specializing in getting multiple consecutive free turns, so the added boost actually will add up pretty significantly across the course of the fight. Lightning's Spark Strike will now also unbreak the enemy before it hits, which allows her to re-break and further adds to her delay utility, as well as making it easier for Lightning to get a consecutive free turn. My plans here is to actually go for tickets chasing after Beatrix's FR. For me, I will probably be using a little bit more of Beatrix now that her Rose Petals hits very hard, and she can also combo very nicely with cover tanks such as Gladio. The final event in this arc will be the Mission Dungeon featuring Rydia's rework and FR. Rydia's rework now allows her to start her turn, or I should say start the fight, with a free turn, similar to characters such as Garland or Oren. Her S1, S2 and EX damage is also slightly buffed than they were before. Rydia's FR is very interesting, I have to say. First off, it inflicts a new 3-turn debuff on all enemies upon use, and this debuff makes all enemies have a minus 100% hit rate, minus 50% defense, and plus 20% HP damage taken. Her FR conditionals can be pretty bonkers. First off, whenever you evade an attack, you get a whopping plus 50%, and you shouldn't have any problems hitting this conditional considering that her force attack itself will have a minus 100% hit rate on all enemies, plus her LD will apply blink on your entire party, which gives you 100% evasion. Whenever you do any water attack, you get plus 20%, and if Rydia herself does the water attack during her turn, she gets another plus 30% for a total of plus 50% on Rydia's turn. The plus 50% on evasion I think really has the potential to be abused to hit very high force percentages very quickly, considering that there are many Shinryu levels where the bosses tend to take multiple consecutive turns, especially if you remove speed passives from your party and make them as low as possible. So this means that until your next turn you'll probably hit like plus 200 or plus 300% force bonus even. But that's not all, and the last bullet point here is very important to take note of, which is during her force time, your entire party gets a plus 50% HP damage and cap up when dealing elemental weakness damage. And this is absolutely massive, it does make a big difference. I think overall, Rydia's FR is probably one of the stronger FRs around. The only drawback I think here is that Rydia herself would of course be required to be in the main party to make use of her force attack and force time. However, Rydia herself doesn't carry any off-turn damage, whereas her FR requires the enemies to take multiple turns. So if building around Rydia, you want to have tanks with counter abilities to make use of these, plus often damage dealers, but one of your 3 party's member slots would be Rydia herself without that capability. Alongside this event, Firan himself will also receive a rework, and one notable thing is that his traps will now last 10 turns and have 3 HP dumps, so he becomes quite a good trap off-turn damage dealer as well, and you can of course pair him with Rydia here during this event. My plans here is also to pull for Rydia's FR. I'll probably be pulling on the banner featuring Firan's PT, because I don't have Firan's burst weapon yet, and by the time this event rolls around, I would likely already have Jack Garland's burst weapon anyway. I've always been a fan of big damage, and I think Rydia's FR with the plus 50% juicy conditionals really has the potential to hit very high FRs very quickly. Alright, finally on this part of the video, I'll be covering my opinion, and I can't stress that enough, it's really only an opinion on who I think are probably characters that you can prioritize more if you are limited on resources, for example gems, tickets, or BT ingots. First off, I think Jack Garland is a great addition, so I put him in the good value category. The good value category are characters who I think will probably give you value regardless of which other characters you already have built in your roster, just on the virtue of how good they are. Now you've probably seen all the hype around Jack Garland. And make no mistake, as a DPS character, he does a ton of damage, he hits very hard, and his minus brave mechanic is fairly new and refreshing, and he will serve you quite well in the months to come. His damage actually lasts pretty long. But in my mind, I think his damage potential is maybe on par with the current top hitters such as Tifa or Rinoa or Sid Reigns. But really, if your benchmark is the best damage dealers on hand now that have already been breaking content over the past few months, I think it's a very good thing going for a new character. And most definitely, if you've missed those hard hitters before, then Jack Garland will definitely make your life a lot easier in Shinryu stages. Now, the next two characters here, I have to admit I really have a lot of dilemma deciding where to put them. But in the end, I put Rydia and Beatrix in the role fulfillment category. But as you can see, I placed them sort of very close to the good value category. And really, at the point of making this video, I'm still having a lot of difficulty deciding whether or not they should actually be placed in the good value category instead. That's how close they are. But ultimately, if I ask myself, if I have already other off-turn damage dealers, do I really need their FRs? And I guess the answer really is no. But overall, their rework allows them to hit much harder, and I really like their force conditionals as well. I think there's really only the slight con where Rydia can't do often damage and Beatrix doesn't lightning enchant the entire party, which sort of just holds them back. But really, those two are pretty minor stuff and you can easily get around that. So at the very least, I think they deserve mention as being very close to the good value category, if not already there. On this slide, I also have Freerun and Lightning, and this time I placed them further on the right because I think they are a bit further down on the spectrum versus Rydia and Beatrix. Nothing against them, it's just that at this point of the game, you don't really need Lightning. She's really a delay specialist and she is a fairly complex character to play. To get the most out of her, you do need to really learn her kit and take note of how to best utilize her to delay enemies to oblivion. And if mastered, Lightning would actually work really well, I have to say. The thing though is that at the current meta where you can just charge force percentages to very high percent and blow up the bosses to smithereens, I don't really see a big need to have a character like Lightning, where taking consecutive free turns would also actually eat into your force time as well. For Freerun, his traps does do some nice damage and his rework also updates the rest of his kit, but there are many options for often damage dealers at this point. And if you are going to go for Beatrix and Rydia, for example, it's going to be even more difficult to find a space in your party for Freerun, where you may actually want to use Jack Garland or maybe even a cover tank to keep the rest of your party safe. And even if there is space, there's really a lot of often damage dealers that you would probably already have anyway, so there's really not a lot of need, or I should say Freerun himself doesn't really stand out that much versus other often characters. So for that reason, I think he's probably a bit lower in priority versus Rydia and Beatrix. In case you're wondering where is Gilgamesh, because Gilgamesh actually gets a rework on Jack Garland's event, I don't even want to mention Gilgamesh here because I really don't like his kit. His kit allows him access to various different effects, but the issue I have is that all these effects are really RNG based, and you really don't want to rely on RNG when it comes to endgame content and Shinryu fights, because as you've probably already experienced it in Shinryu fights, making wrong moves can really result in run enders, because bosses can easily one-shot your entire party if you fail to mitigate damage. Alright, so that's it for this video. In summary, I'm essentially pulling on every single banner on this event, so I'll be getting Jack Garland, and I'll probably be using gems until I get multiple FRs and his BT. I will also be pulling both Beatrix and Rydia's FR, but using tickets there because I already have the rest of their kit. I guess it's a good thing I've saved quite a lot in Seymour's event, because this is probably the arc where I will spend quite a lot of resources. Thanks for watching. I hope this video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!